Now, on the first 3 episodes of Relevant or Ridiculous, we talked about various subgenres of heavy metal and whether or not they were, as the series suggested, relevant or ridiculous. With this episode, we're actually looking at a term that is around heavy metal and maybe around some other genres as well. However, you see it a lot more within the heavy metal community. And that's the term true metalhead. Now, we're not looking at the full term. We're actually just looking at the term true, the word that precedes metalhead. The reason why we need to talk about this is because can truly one not be a true metalhead, or is this something that's been concocted by metal communities that are dealing with a wave of new individuals within the subgenre, and is it something that's being reduced only to recent history, or is it something that has been around for quite some time? So let's take a look in the history books a little bit. And you'll find that the term true metalhead is one that has been around for a lot longer than some people believe. As we spoke about whenever we did the hair metal relevant or ridiculous, this is something where hair metal was not always 100% really accepted by metalheads or metal fans that were interested in the thrash metal or the more extreme metal that pervaded during that same time frame, or were cultivators of the new wave of British heavy metal style with bands such as Iron Maiden, Budgie, and Diamond Head. So already within the 1980s, the concept of a true metalhead was already being somewhat crafted out a little bit. While some people will include some of those hair metal bands within the true metalhead category, this was not something that was reserved for all. It was one that bands such as Bon Jovi or Def Leppard that actually mimicked a little bit more of the whole traditional rock motif and really were more of a perceived version of arena rock, were not included with the true metalhead status, whereas a band such as Motley Crue was probably more accepted into the general fold. So you fast forward to today, you fast forward to actually the 90s all the way up to 2015, the late 90s with nu metal. Once again, the term comes up. Nu metal fans were largely not considered to be metal fans, and it was seen once again that a true metalhead was one that listened to the extreme side, such as doom or death or black metal. It was one that was reserved for those that listened to things that were not conventional, that was not mainstream, that wasn't simply following a trend at the time. By the way, the very first episode of this series was about nu metal, whether or not it was relevant or ridiculous, and the results may actually surprise you. And now we fast forward to today, and now the relevant or ridiculous portion really comes in with the term true metalhead. And it's simply because now we have a brand new world. We have the world of the internet, which was around for the nu metal craze, but not so much in the facet and the capacity that you see today. Back then there was no Facebook, there was no real social media or instant messaging. It was instead something that pervaded in the underground on message boards and things of that variety. Now that we fast forward to the Facebook age, where we see individuals that are claiming their metalhead status based around bands that really don't fulfill the genre qualifications, or simply believe it to be heavy metal because it's the hardest thing that they listen to, one can understand why the true metalhead idea has come back. It's one that simply seems to really hope to identify some individual as somebody who listens to bands that are, I guess, socially accepted within the heavy metal construct. And it's one where some of the bands that are being negated from this list or being perceived as not metal are ones that, even from a genre perspective, don't aim to be heavy metal. These are ones from a genre perspective that aim to be something completely different. So their basic terminology or use of the heavy metal category is one that is principally been placed on the user of the actual term. So, with all of that mumbo-jumbo out of the way, what about the true metalhead idea? Is this something that is relevant, or is this something that is ridiculous? Now, while it may see that the relevancy of kind of identifying and trying to really, I guess, iron out what heavy metal is all about and what really qualifies as as a heavy metal band, or an Iron Maiden band, as I was about to say, because Iron Maiden definitely is a cornerstone of metal. It definitely seems like it has a high level of relevancy to it. This is something that's pretty damn ridiculous. The concept of a true metalhead is a ridiculous notion, basically considering it's a separation type of idea. And while that may seem like a good idea, considering the term is being used incorrectly by a lot of individuals. Based around this now becomes an idea that has oceaned itself into the heavy metal genre and now becomes one that metalheads use against individuals that like bands that they don't like, and ones that seem to follow a trend, such as people who listen to deathcore. It's something where the whole false flag idea really comes up quite a bit, and it's one that's done so rather poorly. It's done in poor taste, it's done more so as an insult, as opposed to a way to actually try to truly identify that which is considered within the heavy metal construct and that which is not. So the term true in true metalhead is exceptionally ridiculous. Whenever it comes to listening to a heavy metal band, or a band that sounds and really is a heavy metal act, this is one where everybody who listens to this group in some way, shape, or form while they listen to them are a metalhead. And it's something that even if you listen to a band such as Five Finger Death Punch or Slipknot that's on the fringe, if it has enough of a quality to it, you can call yourself a metalhead. And it's something that will probably piss off a lot of traditional heavy metal fans and cause a lot of infighting, probably within the comments of this very video, but sadly, it is the truth. Now, if we're talking about something along the lines of Bon Jovi, or to use a more modern example, Sleeping with Sirens, then no, you really can't call yourself a metalhead for listening to something like that. Bon Jovi is more of a classic rock product. It's one that actually prevails more in the idea of arena rock, or just, an extension of rock music. Whereas Sleeping with Sirens, it kind of post-border a little bit more on the post-hardcore or pop-punk department, which is a completely different category. So whenever it comes to heavy metal, if you're calling yourself a metalhead for listening to either of those two bands, then, well, I can understand why people are kind of laughing and giving you some dirty looks, because that's really kind of stretching the limits of the imagination. However, people who are using the true metalhead and poser phrase within the metal community for bands that clearly are within the heavy metal construct, that's where things get truly ridiculous, and that's where things kind of get downright stupid. This is something that really should be reserved for, I guess, private conversation, and even still, you're going to sound like an idiot. Just because somebody listens to a metal band that you don't like doesn't mean that you're more of a metal fan than they are. And actually, surprisingly enough, even though one of my core philosophies is that you should never stop really looking for new music, if somebody really only feels safe or only feels like they can listen to just a couple of metal bands, it still makes them a bit of a metalhead. It might not necessarily be their obsession, their passion, or their life, but it is a facet of their being. Metalhead is not a term that necessarily 100% universally and uniformly means that that's a lifestyle choice. It's instead one that is used to term some of the music that is listened to. But for the record, I can also understand that those of you who have dealt with somebody who claims to be a metalhead and perhaps doesn't listen to as much of it as you kind of expected going in, I can understand the disappointment and slight anger that goes into discovering this fact. But the fact of the matter is that true metalhead is a ridiculous notion. If you guys want to see more relevant versus ridiculous, leave some of your ideas in the comments below, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm coverkillernation, and this has been Relevant or Ridiculous, where we try to look at something that maybe perceives itself to be relevant and determine whether or not it's truthfully and honestly just purely ridiculous. I'll talk to you later.